of the year. I'm going to share my screen, but I only have one slide just to show you the agenda. So I'm Frederick. People don't know me. Who's coming for the first time? Who's here for the first time at the talk? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, welcome. Just come on, talk to us. I think we're quite welcoming. Candice, because I know you're in a hurry, and I also know that Visha is in a hurry. He's got some homework to do. So Candice, if you don't mind, I'll get you to present first for 5-10 minutes, and then I'll move on to Visha about Tableau dashboard performance. Do you mind, Candice, talking first? Yeah, all good?
For sure. Oh, I can't present all of a sudden. Maybe you need to stop presenting?
Yeah, I think so. I need to stop sharing. I'll just quickly introduce the agenda that you see on the screen. So first off, we'll have Candice, who's database lead from Woolies finance team. Candice presented the Iron Viz submission at the internal Woolworth user group, and we thought it was fantastic. And then too bad to miss it. So we thought you have to see it because Candice is a very good storyteller, and her presentation was really amazing. Pity that she didn't qualify for the final, but that's all personal. Visha, newly appointed Woolworth employee as well. It sounds like a bit of a Woolies internal talk. Talking about improving performance in Tableau, which will be very, very interesting. And Marco, the usual Marco, talking about data storytelling. So thanks everyone for coming. If you've got questions, be patient because I don't see the chat where we share the screen. So what just happened? So now, Candice, over to you. If you try to share your screen, and I'll hold the microphone. And thanks again, Candice, for sharing your storytelling master skills. Amazing submission.
Too kind, Fred. I will share my screen. I think I saw a familiar face in the audience. Hey, you came to Woolies for the Tableau training.
What? Dave. Oh. That's him.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, we can. Oh, good.
Awesome. So I'm really flattered that Fred invited me over for my Iron Viz to showcase my Iron Viz submission, given I didn't make it to the top 10. But I really enjoy the process of making this dashboard, and I think that's what matters when it comes to storytelling. And now the topic of Iron Viz this year is love. You can visualize anything that's related to love. When I first saw this topic, nothing really came to mind. I can think of things I'm passionate about. For example, I can think of the band I like, the food I enjoy, or the book I like to read. But nothing really gives me such strong emotion that it warrants a dashboard. So having slept on this idea for a few days, the idea of visualizing my dad's dating journey start to come to my mind. It fulfilled the briefing on two fronts. Firstly, my dad is the person I love the most in the world. And secondly, it's a journey of helping him finding his the love of his life. So that's the concept or the context of how this dashboard came about. All right, let's dive straight into it. So the landing page, as you can see, is trying to resemble the layout of the dating app. Not that I've seen that many dating apps, but this is how I envisage they will look like. So the intro is it's a dashboard about finding love for my dad, a dating profile for my favorite person. 3 years ago, my dad uprooted his life and moved to Australia to be closer to me. He left behind everything he knew and loved and moved to a foreign country where he doesn't even speak the language of. Even though he never says so, I know he's lonely and he deserves all the happiness in the world. I want to help him to find it. So here's some headline number: 3 years, 12 matches, and 5 dates. That's swipe right. Okay, let's look at my dad's profile. His upbringing. He grew up in Fujian, China, had a fairly open-minded mindset because of the era he grew up in. So he's fairly open-minded and welcoming new ideas, and probably that's what helped him to settle in Australia so well. And my dad is very smart. Graduating in 1970 in mainland China, he is one of the few people who actually made it to the university. To give you some context, there were 73 million who is at age bracket that can enter the university, but only 3 million of them had the opportunity to sit the exam, represented by the darker gray here. And the lighter gray represents the entire population. And out of that 3 million, only 280,000 made it to the university. And my dad was one of them. So he's very smart. Right. Let's look at, he is also a 1 in 1,000 bachelor. We lost my mom relatively early when he was in his early 30s. So that placed him in the top 17 percentile of the widowhood population. This is where he is. This is the widowhood distribution. And guess what? He is still unmarried at the tender age of 65. That puts him in the 25% of the widow bachelor. It's a testament to his commitment to his daughter. At least that's what he told me. Some people ask me where did data come from. So, in the spirit of transparency, it's coming from the Japanese data set. So it's based on the Japanese population. Don't know what it's like in Australia, but it would be interesting to find out. Next one. Swipe right. Let's move on to his hobbies and social life. His favorite topics. I scraped our messages over the last 5 weeks, trying to identify any common or frequent themes in our conversation. So the most common topic is food. It appeared 23 times in our messages, followed by health and weather and his newfound passion in jogging. So here is example of his messages. It's pretty ordinary. How are you feeling today? Take care of yourself. I'll make it for you when you visit next. The weather is lovely today. So fairly standard father and daughter conversation. All right, not so happy part. So my dad is lonely. Coming to Australia to be close to me means he has to sacrifice his social life. Back in China, he enjoyed a vibrant network with 20 individuals in his close circle, including friends, neighbors, and families and colleagues. But now, it's just me. So he is lonely. Let's have a look at his dating life. We get into the exciting stuff now. Dating scene is tough. I think a lot of us can attest to that. So, based on his messages over the last 3 years, he has been matched 12 times. 9 of them stopped at messaging stage, and 3 of them converted to a date, but only 1 date eventuated into multiple dates. So the chance is not great. And it's only going to get harder. If you look at his current age and we plus and minus 5 years as his range of dating pool, his opportunity is only going to diminish over time. So time is against us. All right. Now we're almost there. Since you have followed along up until this point, I guess you are at least interested in helping my dad finding love. So let's do a quick compatibility quiz and see if you or someone you know may be matching up with him. Well, let's do this together. There are 6 questions. So if it's someone you know, put yourself in that person's shoes. Think about how they will answer it. So yeah, to say out loud, how often do they stay outdoor?
What are the options? Because it's a bit blurry.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's better. Rarely, sometimes, often. Come on. You choose. Sometimes.
Okay. And how often do they prefer a quiet dinner?
Often, Dara says.
Okay, and how often?
Someone.
I think we got a promising contestant.
90 movies? Often? No.
Often.
No, sometimes? I think sometimes, Candice.
All
They're
right.
too young there.
How often do they choose family over oneself?
Often.
Mm-hmm.
So
How often do they do
gentle
gentle exercise?
Sometimes.
How often do they karaoke?
Oh my God.
Sometimes. Often. Every day.
All right. Every day.
All right, let's
All
look
right.
at the results.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, usually this is the part that doesn't render that well. Drum roll. Oops. Oh, here we go.
Whoa.
It's not a match. Sorry.
Oh,
I think out of all the questions, only question 4 is the same. So yeah, green represents my dad's. Oh, actually, question 3 is also the same. It's my dad's answer, and gray is that person's answer. So unfortunately, nope, it's not a match.
sorry, Candice.
But yeah, conclusion, as I'm writing this dating profile for my dad, it becomes clear. He's a real deal, and his love for me is beyond measure. He is the kind of guy who deserves all the happiness in the world, and hopefully, I'm hoping the universe will send him someone who appreciates his dad joke as much as I do. So if you are that person, I can't see the audience, or you know someone, please get in touch with me.
Share your email address.
That's all. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Candice.
Thank
Amazing. When we saw this one for the first time at our internal user group, we thought, oh, wow, that's amazing. Candice works in finance, so she does probably a lot of KPIs, up arrows, down arrows, plus and minuses. But she's got a very good storytelling, as you can see. And I thought it was a very good example of using Iron Viz, which is a data competition, to practice your craft storytelling, but also using complex charts with the purpose of telling the story. So thanks again, Candice. I'm going to share the link when we do a follow-up email on the Tableau fabric. But just one question. Do you know someone?
No, I can yell it out. I'm just interested. So, Candice, does your dad particularly like 90s movies? I'm just wondering why he had 90s. That's very specific.
Kung Fu movies.
Yeah, I think that's the era when Jackie Chan and Lee was most popular, and he likes that genre.
So if you guys have any moms, spare moms, single moms, I tried with mine, but she's not free, so sorry. And she's very far away. Thanks again, Candice. So I encourage you to follow Candice on the social as well. She's very active in the. She's an ambassador, Tableau ambassador. She's based in Sydney, but she's a really cool person. So thanks again, Candice. I'll let you do your homework or whatever you have to do. It's quite late already in Sydney, so thanks again. So next up, you all ready? Yeah? So we're gonna have Visha. So I'm gonna
Swap laptops?
Yeah. Yeah, you're running from your thing.
Yeah.
And using the microphone.
I don't think I need. I can project my voice this way.
It's more for the people in the room. The online people need to hear you.
Because I need to use the laptop for demo.
Yeah.
I'll try this.
I reckon if you put the microphone there.
Yeah, I'll speak louder.
And speak louder.
Yeah.
If you work.
Sounds good. Sorry.
So I'll let you introduce yourself, Vishanth.
I can.
Tell me where you live, where you work, what's your hobby.
Yeah, I'm scared this is rolling. Okay, I'm just going to keep it like this. Throw it. So I'm going to drink some water in between.
So yeah, just go whenever you want.
Yeah. Check.
Is there any way for it to make the presentation bit of the screen full screen?
I thought so. I was a bit scared to just close everything off by accident. Do you know if it's possible?
Can
you zoom and roll?
I presume that should
Put
be
it up
done.
on the corner view.
The view?
Maybe.
That's
Okay,
try the 3 minutes, right?
I'm mostly going to present from my Tableau desktop. But if you want to,
That's good if
I
you
can
make
make
it
this full
If you
screen.
make it big. For people online, can you see it correctly or not? Can you see Vishanth's screen correctly?
Fred, I think if you do the 3 dots below the cross on the top right, there's an option to.
Which one is it? Oh, this is very weird.
Oh, I think that's because of the view there.
That's not my this.
This one?
Oh, it's still in your photograph.
Oh, is that your screen we're seeing?
This
Yeah,
is
that's it, yeah.
my screen, but through your screen it's projected. Yeah. So people online can hear me, I believe. Should be okay, I guess. Yeah, just to give a bit of an intro to myself. Just if you don't know me, I'm Vishanth Bala. I started my journey as a software engineer back in Sri Lanka, and then had some interest towards data, came to QUT to do my master's in data science, and then was working for a startup for like 5 years. Was looking after looking after the web development and also the data for X-Ray for the last 5 years. And then just 2 weeks back, joined the Woolworths group, working with Andy and Fred in Big W as well. And yeah, so been using Tableau for a while now. And yeah, I love it. Everything about the community and about the platform, everything is pretty cool. And that's how my Tableau journey also started. And to get into the topic, so today I'm thinking of covering a bit of tips and tricks that I know on improving the dashboard performance. So when I say dashboard performance, it's more like how you can improve your dashboard loading times. Few small things, some of these tips and tricks will be very basic, things that you might already know. If that's the case, just take it as a refresher. And yeah, hope you take 1 or 2 things from today. And when I wanted to, come up with some areas that I wanted to talk about, there are a lot of areas that I can actually talk about, but then I wanted to limit it to a few things. So I'm going to talk mostly around optimizing your data source at the data source level, and then optimizing at your filters level, and also a bit of calculations that you can, when you have an option to do 2 different ways, what is the best way to do it in terms of improving your database, dashboard performance. And if time permits, I will also show you Workbook Optimizer and also how to do analysis through your performance recording tool that Tableau Desktop already has. Yeah, that if time permits, we'll see how it goes because I got to run to an event right after this session. So, okay, so first up, yeah, optimizing a data source. I know it's pretty basic. Everyone talks about it. Use your extract instead of live. It's very common, but I know you have heard it so many times, but when it comes to performance, I have to mention this, right? Because that's kind of the obvious one. In order to do that, I have a data source that's set up here. Simple steps, just click on extract, and then Tableau actually creates it, the extract into your Tableau site, so you don't have to bring your actual data source, right? So when it comes to this, I generally ask 2 questions to myself. how fresh the data has to be for the end user. That is the main question that I ask. If it is not critical at all, it's always wise to use the extract. The second question that I really ask is, even if the end user really want the live data, I ask myself, the data source, the actual source system, how live it is. Sometimes we might be using our data warehouses, right? So from the data warehouses, if there's an ETL process that runs, if it is running on a scheduler, like in a 1 hour or 2 hour, something like that, it doesn't really make sense for us to choose live as well, right? So when you choose live, it's anyway not going to be live and fresh. So might as well use an extract and run the extract to the same timing interval that your ETL runs as well. And the second tip that I have is hide all unused columns. It's a simple way to do it. Just click on edit here, and it's kind of already hidden. Let me show you again. These things can happen. So edit and just simply click on hide all unused columns, and then what really happens is it hides all the columns that you're not using in your presentation, right? So the goal here is to try to reduce as much as possible to bring your data into Tableau side, right? So the other way that you can do is, in order to reduce the number of data coming into Tableau, is also considering bring only the necessary data that you need onto Tableau. That is by using filters to reduce the number of rows that you want to bring it in, right? So Tableau allows you to do that just by simply having a filter that's at the extract level, and also it has multiple levels that you can apply these extracts, filters. But at the data source level, you can always, it's better to do it at the data source level so that you don't bring all of the data into your visualization when you want to do more visits, right? In this example, like let's say you have a data source that has for all regions, and you only care about one region, which is Queensland. You only need that data for all of your visitors. You can simply choose this filter and then choose the region that you only care about for your entire analysis, and then simply select that, and then that will reduce the number of rows that you are going to play with later on in your analysis. So this is the actual data that you have right now. So in my example, I had about 2,000 rows, but once after I applied these filters, you can see there is only 837 rows. I'm not sure if you can see through that, but in my Tableau desktop, I can I can see that's about 50% of the data has been reduced, which can be really helpful when you try to do visualization from query from these kind of data sources, right? The fourth one is aggregations and roll-ups. That's a really interesting one. For example, like in this data source, if you can see the level of detail that this data source has. Each transaction, like each dimension that you have here, has different transaction dates, right? So for example, in this particular date, there are 4 transactions that has happened, but you don't really need that level of detail. So what you can simply do is you can do an aggregation. You can either do it at your sheet by using a sum, but instead of doing it at your sheet, if you don't need that level of detail, you can always do this kind of aggregations at the data source itself. So there you can simply do aggregate, and what this will do, typically do is it reduces all this data, and now it has brought down this data to 300 rows. That's fine. So
doors closing this. Someone just texted me. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
It's not your mind.
No, that's fine. So the goal is to reduce the number of rows, right? So you can apply all of these things at the early stages. So when you're actually querying it, you're only querying a limited data set. So that kind of helps you to do all of this performance faster. And the next up is roll updates. That's typically, like for example, now what you have is
I can call it.
Sure. Okay.
I've done change.
Yeah. So in the transaction dates, so all in the level of detail, if all what you care about is monthly sale total for all of your analysis, what you can do is you can simply use the roll-up feature that it has. Click on the roll-up feature and then choose the particular roll-up that you really want to do. And in this case, for example, if you need months, just select month. And so what this would give you is basically a rolled up version of it. So initially when I started this data set, it had about 2,000 rows. Now what has happened is it has reduced the number of rows to 108. So basically, like, it's just using 5% of the data that you really need. So those kind of situations is very helpful. In this case, it might not have a big performance impact, but imagine you have like 2 million rows and it takes down only 5% what you really need, then that can cause a really big boost in your performance on your dashboard. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to show is different types of relationships. So Tableau gives you multiple options, right? You can do relationships in various different ways. One way is the traditional relationships. So in here, you can either do it like this by connecting through the foreign key or whatever the primary key that you those tables have. The other option that you have is to do joins, right? So joins typically work the same way. So this is how you do a join. And in your case, if you have to choose between a relationship or join, relationship kind of performs better than joins because of the logical table structure. But joins is also one of the other ways that you can do it. Sometimes you might have to do unions and things like that, or this left join, outer joins, and so on. So those things can be achieved here. But if you want to achieve the same use case, and if you can do it in a relationship, try to use the relationship instead of using the joins, because that way that is much faster. And in order to optimize a join, you can also consider this. So suppose in a join, if join is what you're going to use to connect your tables, and if you don't have any aggregations or if you don't have any extracts, you can consider using physical tables. So the difference between logical and physical is when you try to create an extract, Tableau, when you try to save as a logical tables, it will save separate tables for each of them. But if you use physical table, it will save as one big table in your hyperfiles or your data. So that way, reaching out when your wizards are reaching to your query, sorry, to the data source using those queries, it's much faster than trying to use joins in those queries as well. So that's the other advantage of using physical tables. And the last thing that I have for relationships is optimizing some of those joins. Let me show that. So when it comes to relationship, like how you can optimize is Tableau itself gives you a function called performance options. It kind of gives you two different options here. One is cardinality and the other one is referential integrity, right? So Tableau doesn't do this for you by itself. The reason is if you do this incorrectly, you may lose some data, right? But it's also important, that's where like the domain expert's knowledge comes into play, like what kind of data that is available. And suppose if you know this table, like, the relationship of the cardinality, for example, if it is 1 to many, it's always better if you choose that by yourself, because when it is querying it, it's always faster when you have defined the right cardinality. So suppose if it's many to many and if it's still 1 to 1, it's always better because when it does the querying, it does the proper join, and the matching algorithm will always have a better performance when you choose one here. And the other one is referential integrity. In here, what you're trying to say is whether all of the data in your primary or the first table matches at least with one of it in the second table, right? So if you know that for sure, it's recommended to use all records match. But if you don't know about your data source, then it's always better to leave it as it is because you don't want to lose any of the data in any of your analysis, right? So that's pretty much it on the data source level. So far it's all good, clear? Oh, that's
How much time you got left?
I don't know, I have 20 minutes. Okay, that's okay. Good. So the second thing that I wanted to show is optimizing filters. So when it comes to filters, there are 5, I don't know, 100 different filters Tableau has at 100 different points. But it's important for you to know which one to choose over the other. So the one thing that I wanted to talk through is difference between extract filter and the data source filters. They kind of look the same because if we are using in a sheet, for you, you're getting the same data, even if you use at extract level or at the data source level. So the difference is extract filter is here. This is what I showed you earlier. And you can also apply the filter at the data source level. So what, in terms of performance, like if you really want to consider, if you're not going to use a segment of data at all for your analysis, it's better to put it at the extract level. So like I showed earlier, I had 2000 rows and I got it down to 100. And that is all what you're going to use for the rest of your analysis. It's wiser to do that way than putting the filter at the data source level, because it will still, when you're querying it, it will use a where clause to still traverse through all of those records. So it's better to use it at the data source level. And the other one I want to talk is context filters as well. You can use it in your sheet. That's mainly used for understanding the precedence of it. For example, you want to find out the top 10 performers for the particular region. You put the region as your context filter and then apply your top 10 after that. So which means it will give you the top 10, the region is getting applied first, and then it goes and filters the top 10. So the second tip that I want to tell you is quick filter versus the action filters. Before that, I'll quickly show you what are they. Is it possible to move this? Okay, cool. So I'll just show you a sample dashboard here. So you know how a dashboard renders this sheets into the dashboard, right? So for example, in this case, I have 3 different sheets. So what Tableau typically does when you actually load this dashboard is for each of these sheets, it executes a query and it goes to the extract or your database and brings the data into this and loads it, right? Just like how it is doing for all of your sheets, it's also doing the same thing for all of the filters as well. So every filter that you have here, it executes a query to go fetch the data and come back in. So more the filters you have, it's going to execute more queries and more loading time, right? So these are the quick filters, and the action filters are the one that you can apply on a sheet. So this sheet applies that filter to the rest of the sheet. For example, in this I have set the action filter, and if you click on one, that would filter the rest of the sheets as well. So if you already have something, a sheet that you have already created and you want to use that as a filter, it's a better thing for you to do is use that as the filter rather than adding more filters which are redundant, right? So in that way, you can save some back and forth query to your extract and save some time on the performance. So that's kind of the difference there, quick filter and the action. The next few things that I wanted to show is Tableau gives you a few options in your filters. For example, you can either choose like all relevant values or all values in the database, right? So initially, like I told you, each of these filters are going to fetch the data from your extract, right? Sending query, coming back, that's going to take time. Initially, I was thinking all values in the database, if I try to bring it, that's bad for the performance. But later when I realized it's actually the other way around, because when you put only relevant values, every time you change something on the other filters, this again sends the query to find out what is the refreshed data that needs for that particular context, right? So it's better to choose all values in database in terms of performance, but it's always a trade-off between your design versus your performance, right? So that's the choice that Tableau gives us to make the decision based on what you really need.
So, Visha, question from the audience from me. What's the quickest? Is that action filters or the context one? What is the quickest in terms of performance?
In terms of performance, action filters are quicker than quick filters. The reason being, when you see the performance recording, action filters already brings all the data into you. So you can always save time from rendering again and rendering your quick filters. So in that way, action filters are much better. It can be case by case as well. It can differ from case by case. So you can always use the performance recorder to see what is the best for you and always go and fix that.
It's interesting that you say that displaying all values in database
Yes,
faster because users don't want to have like a fast and long.
I was having the same impression as well, but on a dashboard that is highly interactive, where people always interact, do filters and do all of those kind of stuff, it becomes slower on the long run, right? Because every time you do a filter, it is going and updating by bringing some query back in, right? So that's the reason why it is that way, but it always depends on your use case, right? Okay, the next tab that I have is include values and exclude values. You can use either of it, and you can achieve your use case for both. I'll give you an example. Let's say you only want to filter accounting here. So this is when you use include values, right? The same thing can be achieved by using exclude values. For that, you need to exclude everything and untick only one, right? So your use case can be achieved in both. So in terms of performance, if you want to know what is better, I would say include is better than exclude in most of the scenarios. The reason is every filter is constructing its own SQL and it's sending to fetch the data. So when it is include, it uses in the where clause, it uses something called in SQL, and it gives a set, right? But if it's an exclude, what it really does in the background is sometimes it writes a really complex SQL with cases involved, and it uses when clause and things like that, and it makes it complex. So those kind of queries get longer to execute than something like simple in statement. But in is also very bad in SQL. I'll come to that later. The next thing I wanted to show is so in this case, every time you click on these options, it's like I told you earlier, it's executing a query, right? But there's one way that you can reduce that is by having this show apply button. So this gives the power for the user to just make up the mind and select all the things that they want and simply click on apply. So what this is doing is, in the previous case, when user wanted to untick 5, every time you click, there are about 7 queries that's executing in the background. But now cutting down that 35 queries that's sending into just 7 queries. So these things that you can always include in your dashboards to improve the performance during the interactions. What's the other one I wanted to show? Continuous versus distinct data types, okay? So this one's basically, let's say this year found, you can either do it as a continuous variable or you can do it as a distinct variables here, right? So you can achieve your same use case either by doing this or that. In terms of performance, I would say continuous is way better than choosing a distinct. The reason being, again, the SQL constructed behind the scene. It uses where. In this case, it says where year is greater than 1970 and less than 2000, right? But if you're using distinct values, it's again going to use the in clause in the SQL, which is like performance intense when you compare it with the other range filters. So that's something that what SQL prefers. And those are the tips that I wanted to show under optimizing filters. I will run through this pretty quickly on the calculation sides. This is pretty straightforward. So move as much as possible to the data layer. Don't try to bring all of those calculations into Tableau workbook. Do everything early in your data warehouse and all of those kind of stuff. And the second tip that I have is reduce the number of nested calculations. So when you have calculations on top of calculations on top of calculations, it can always have, because it's going to run everything on the runtime, and it's going to cause your dashboard longer to load. The third thing that I wanted to show is different data types behave like differently, like as a performance impact. One example that I can show is this. Is there a way to zoom this?
Yeah, shift and plus.
Selected.
Actually, on the mouse,
Now the mouse.
shift and
Shift
scroll.
plus and then mouse.
Shift plus.
Or use the scroll on your mouse.
Yeah, the scroll.
Control.
Or control and
Control N.
I'll get closer to the
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you wanted to do something like this. If the country equal Australia, you wanted to say yes, and else it's no. So the same thing can be achieved using a Boolean as well, right? Computers prefer Boolean because it's just like ones and zeros. But if you use yes and no, and if you use this inside another nested calculations, it's going to do string matching, right? So string matching always are costly in terms of performance when you compare it with Booleans. So you can always try to choose something like this instead of this, and try to use Booleans and numbers wherever possible rather than using dates and strings. Next tip that I have, try to use Tableau created functions rather than you're trying to define your own. What I mean is, so the Tableau has a few functions that's pre-built already, right? Try to use them, because rather than you writing and making it more complex and try to have an impact on the performance, use something that's already tested and done properly. And while searching for content when I was doing preparing for this presentation, I also found out something interesting. There's a function called makeDate. And there's also date pass, right? So these are two different things. They try to do the same thing, right? But in the date pass, you're actually passing a string. But in the make date, you're giving 3 arguments of integers, right? So the make date is always better in terms of performance compared to sending a string onto the date pass. So things like that, you can always make small changes, and it can have a big impact when you deal with 2 million rows and things like that. That's that. And then, reduce using parameters in your calculations. I think that's pretty straightforward, because or any kind of dynamic calculations, try to reduce as much as you can. So when I say dynamic, it's like doing something like this, parameter greater than 100, but sometimes you can't avoid it, you might have to use it, but just remember these things can cost you performance. Also something like, use today or now, those kind of functions, because they need to be calculated at the point of rendering or right before rendering, so those things will take more time. That's pretty much it, the 3 areas that I wanted to cover. But quickly, there are more things to it as well, design can come into play. That plays a big role. Don't have about 10 different sheets into your dashboard. Try to keep it as less as possible. And one other thing that I learned sometime when I was building dashboards is reduce the number of marks on charts. I know Fred builds a lot of really cool visualizations with a lot of marks on the visuals. Yeah, they're really cool. They're really cool, nice visuals. But then maybe if I'll quickly show this. So this is one of the dashboard that I built when I started working on it. So this is between 2 grandmasters playing chess at the championship in 2013. They played about 18 games. I tried to bring that visual here, and then I also put this onto a page so that you can see the pieces move. It's something that I played around with it. And so why I wanted to show this is there's something called marks at the bottom of your left. You can't see it on that, but you can see there's something called marks. So in this, when I was making this visualization, each of this square I had 32 pieces, and I was trying to overlay when the position of the piece is matched, right? So what it created was 32 into 64 marks, and I couldn't do this kind of animation. It was really slow. So then what I did was I tried to change the design in a way so that when the pieces are there, that is when the mark actually comes onto it. So now, after doing that changes, I only have 32 marks at any given time, and it became faster. So that's something that you can keep an eye out for, and not to have too many marks unless it's needed, right? And the other things are simple, like don't use, use accelerators for performance improvement, and also animations can be turned off and things like that. Those are things that you can do it at your server side as well. And the next couple of things that I really wanted to show is running optimizers, right? So you can basically forget about everything I told you today and simply go and do this optimizer. So you can see that on the server, you can run this. It will tell you all the things that you're doing right, you can be happy about it, and also all the things that you can go on and improve in your workbook. Simple things like, hide all the unused fields, maybe even, okay, this is something that we discussed today. It says a lot of your filters are using only relevant values, right? So those kind of things that you can always have a look and go on and fix it. That can definitely improve the performance of the dashboards. The last thing that I wanted to show is running this performance recorder. That's a really cool thing. Like, I talked a lot about how this construct the SQL queries and sends it to your DB, right? So that I learned everything from this. So in Tableau Desktop, you can see the settings and performance. You can click on this start performance recording. So once you hit start, one thing I really hate about Tableau Desktop is, like, when you start the recording, it doesn't tell that it's recording. It would be nice if there's like a record button somewhere. But anyhow, start the recording. You can just play around with your filters. Just do all the interactions what your end users are going to do. Just apply some filters, do all of those things, and once you are done with all the interaction that you need to monitor, simply go and stop that performance. It should bring something up. Okay, there it is. Yeah. So Tableau records all of those interactions that you did and everything that's happening behind the scene.
It looks so bad.
Not bad as some of the dashboards I built. So it kind of gives you like a detailed timeline of all the things that happen behind the scene in that recorded session, right? I typically look at something like the queries that's getting executed. That's something that I always have a look for, because I kind of have some kind of understanding on the SQL side of things. So that's something that interests me. I can just show you something. It didn't show all the queries that are executed because some of them took only few seconds. You can play around with this filter to see all the queries that's executing behind the scenes. And you can always go and look into the ones that are taking the longer, right? The one easy way to see that is just go to this. So this is typically how big an SQL that it constructs, and and it goes, fetches the data and brings that back in, right? This is something that you can have a look and see whether it's using case statements or whether it's using like set-ins and things like that, and see if there's anything that you can improve on your dashboard. Try to use those distinct or continuous. You can make those kind of decisions based on what you see here and see if that's going to improve. And if you have access to your database, SQL, something like that, what I always do is copy this select statement, go into your workbench, just put explain or analyze in front of this select query, and that will tell you if your DB columns are indexed, not indexed, and all of those kind of stuff as well. That way you can also go and fine tune your database. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I know, like, I showed a few things, but you can't apply all of these things because every use case is different. Sometimes you really have to use it. You can't avoid it. But knowing these things sometimes can help you make the right decision whether to use like include or exclude and things like that, where if performance is something that you really want to care about. That's come to an end. That's pretty much it.
Well done, Chaplin. It's really interesting. Clapping and questions, maybe?
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions. 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes.
Cool, that was great. Vish, awesome, good job. I just couldn't let one thing slide though, just in terms of the way you just said about hiding all unused fields.
Yeah.
Totally agree that we should hide unused fields, but not use the inbuilt functionality of hiding unused fields. There's so much now that Tableau does that doesn't use fields. So as an example, populating a parameter on workbook opening, that you can do that based on a field that you've got in your view that actually Tableau doesn't recognize when you do hide unused fields. It doesn't recognize that that is being used. So just use that hide unused field button with caution.
Yeah, exactly. I have had that issue as well. And also like it's typically done at the end of at the thanks for holding the mic, right? You typically do that at the end of your workbook development because that is when you exactly know what's not getting used. And I have come across those issues as well. Nothing to take note of.
Just mind checking the chat. There's 8 now. I don't know if people are asking something. Can you see the chat or not?
Yeah, it's just one. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, nothing.
Cool. I gotta run to an event, so I won't be able to say any word. Sorry, guys.
Priorities.
We'll probably catch
Priorities. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Did you? Oh yeah. So I need to take over now. Yes.
Thank you so much.
So for people that are new to the talk, I think there were quite a few people. You can probably see there's a mix of very technical session, like this one is quite technical, maybe a bit daunting for the beginners. There's also storytelling. There's some very beginners tips and tricks. There's design and topics. So don't be phased with when you saw there's more beginner stuff. So if you're interested to come and one day share about a tip and trick or something you've done with Tableau, it doesn't need to be that technical. It can be something quite fun. I hope Marco's presentation will be fun.
Marco's always fun.
So moving on to.
There is no one chart in this presentation.
So you're online, are you, Marco?
I am online. I just need you to make.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. Hang on, let me check. Participants. I need to make your host. Where are you? Marco Motta. Just presenter mode. So and then you'll have the key.
Yeah.
Can you? Hey Sam.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm here.
Yeah, just on time. Sort of. Happy birthday, Sam, by the way.
Thank you.
In public.
50.
Sam turned 20 last week.
Woo. I
sorry.
Thank you.
Awesome. I've shortened this presentation because I really don't want to kind of be in between anyone's and their pizzas.
What's your show? 10 seconds?
It's well, pretty much. No, hopefully we can make it in the 1 minute that we have left.
I give you 10 minutes. 15.
10, that should be fun. Look, most of this presentation is born out of a course that I did last year that I'll do again this year called Data Storytelling. A lot of it is, there's a lot of technical stuff, but a lot of it is kind of like closer to what my background is, which is philosophy, a totally different background that kind of not many people have. And I've also studied, in my philosophical studies, I've also studied art history and a bunch of other weird things that I don't think are kind of like normal background for people coming into data analysis. So I think that adds value because there's a bit of thinking that I've done in the last, few years of me thinking about data and how it kind of, how there's a lot of preconceived ideas that we have about what data is and what we should do with it. So I hope that I've really literally cut it down to 3 slides just to give you a few brushstrokes of this, but hopefully is interesting for other people. So one question that I've got very often, one question that I think about quite a lot, maybe you think, oh gee, why are you thinking about this stuff? But I do. One is data objective? And a lot of the time, there is a preconception that data is, oh, awesome. That data, well done. That data is objective. That data is something, you know, that it's like a fact. It's something that we don't question. It's something that it's not affected by our biases. It's something that is not, you know, all the things that we kind of associate with objectivity. And in reality, the concept of objectivity in philosophy is something that's been debated. What does it mean for something to exist in itself? And, you know, often data isn't purely objective. You would know, like, and how hard it is to find, like, any choice that you make in a dashboard, but also any choice that is made by how you collect that data, it impacts on what that data is going to tell at the end. So what you keep versus what you know, let go, that even just, you know, letting go of outliers that, you know, often can have a big result. And so there are obviously biases in the way that we collect certain data sets and we let go of others. And so data isn't, you know, purely objective in my view. And at the same time, we consider other things like, you know, visualizations and storytelling as purely subjective. And the reality is there's, you know, like you know, if you think about a book like Harry Potter that really doesn't have anything that's truly real in the world, there's wizards and wands and all that sort of stuff. But in reality, it talks about really deep-seated human emotions, like, you know, how to deal with loss, how to, you know, how to kind of deal with trauma, how you know, can, you know, deal with difficult situations in life. And so these emotions are real in our for us, and, you know, whether Harry Potter is a great example or not, and it's something that has helped you in your life, probably not, but, you know, there's some truth to it, just as much as there's some, and there's some objective kind of factual stuff in it, just as much as in data there's subjective stuff. And one of the people that, sorry, I should have skipped forward, one of the people that I think about a lot in this sense is Rene Descartes, which was in the previous picture, mixed up with Harry Potter. It's in the Dali kind of way. And Descartes has, you know, really kind of got to the point where, you know, he understood that both objects, like, we can only think about objects as we are subjects, and so there's the point is that the thinking about objectivity and subjectivity maybe isn't the best way to think about reality. And so there's a lot of discussion in philosophy for the next, or there has been a lot of discussion in philosophy for the next 300 years about exactly, like, what is it, like, how in fact reality is inextricably subjective and objective. And so how do we talk about it? As, you know, there's been different suggestions, but the point is there for us to think, if data isn't objective and isn't subjective, what is it? And so that's where I, you know, one of the things I like, you know, in that sense, storytelling can be an interesting way to think about data and the way that we talk about data. Stories have been with us for a long time. Stories are not, you know, we think of stories again as stories, you know, little stories or fairy tales. In reality, there's a couple of books that I really love. One is by Italian philosopher called Giorgio Santillana. He called Hamlet's Mill. He talks about how all these kind of old epic, like Gilgamesh or Norse kind of myths, according to him, he manages to kind of bring them all back to some way of remembering a complex astronomical fact, which is called the precession of equinoxes. So there's a point to be said, there's some complex mathematics that somehow has been distilled into stories, and the stories are used as a mnemonic kind of device to remember these things, even by people that don't understand the maths anymore, but they still remember the story. So at some point, maybe someone will figure out the maths. And the same, I mean, Aboriginals kind of do a little bit the same without kind of understanding too much about it, but the way that I understand it, they can, you know, they use some stories to remember, you know, where to do burnouts and when to, you know, where to do certain things, certain rituals that, again, maybe they don't understand the point of it. They don't know why they burn out over there, but they do, and that somehow can have, you know, positive effects because through the years they've understood that that's a good spot to avoid kind of bushfires. And so all of that to say that stories, again, help us to strike, like they help us remember stuff. They also strike an emotional chord that help us connect with this data, help us connect with the facts that otherwise are difficult for us to remember. And at the same time, they can inspire action. And that's kind of the last point that I want to make. Let's Call It Caves is an example. It's probably the most ancient example of art. So this is like, you know, cavemen from prehistory drawing kind of like animals and stick figures, kind of hunting the animals. The importance of this is one, you know, obviously lots have been said about these paintings, but one interesting interpretation has been done by Arnold Hauser in the 70s. He's a famous art critic. And his idea was that this is not a representation of reality as it's happened. This is actually a representation of reality as the tribe wants it to happen. It actually is like a magical device to bring about a reality that doesn't exist yet. So from that point of view, it's like someone is painting this thing, not because they remember a scene that has happened, but actually because through that storytelling, through that, you know, creating this scene, they can create a reality that doesn't exist for everyone, in everyone's minds, so that they can use that for action, because they can now connect with that reality that is about to exist, because they all go hunting in a second, and the whole tribe now knows how important it is for them, because this is a situation of life or death at that point. It is fundamental for them to all rally behind this, you know, this action that they need to take, which is hunting for food that is so important for them, because otherwise they'll starve through winter. So the idea of this little picture, actually now it's not just someone, you know, I think we lost that in modern arts history, the idea that, you know, I paint because I want to express myself. No. I paint because I want to create an action in everyone's mind so that we can all corral around this really important thing that we need to do. And the same, you know, this perspective, it's also kind of echoed in another book by Yuval Noah Harari, which is called Sapiens. The idea that storytelling and concepts like money, the economy, a nation, concepts that don't exist, concepts that we talk to each other about, these concepts are basically the human superpower. The power, like today, people live and die by the concept of money. But that concept doesn't exist. If we all stop thinking that money is worth anything, money is not worth anything. But somehow we've created this concept so that we can basically master a huge group of people to do a specific action, which is make more money, produce more, whatever it is. And this is so interesting because, again, a story is now creating a shared understanding behind which we can all kind of deal with each other and ultimately, you know, take action, make a decision, decide whether I take this job or that job, decide whether I buy that house or that house, decide, you know, really important decisions that will, you know, from which our life, but also the world's life will depend on. And so, again, the idea that data is storytelling, the idea that a lot of the things we do with data visualization are storytelling, are really about this. I often say there's no point collecting data if you're not going to make any decisions. We could even say there's no point collecting data if we're not taking action based on that data. And so that storytelling is really about creating a story behind which your board or your business can rally, so they say, oh, it's really important that we start building power lines today, because tomorrow there won't be enough to support solar power, that everyone's having a solar panel on their roof, or it's really important that we stop producing these goods because there's no demand for it. These are important decisions that can make or break a business. And so that storytelling will create, like, being able to all share that understanding that is not just one KPI on one chart, it's actually a story that involves us all. That is very powerful, and for me, it's a really interesting way to use data. So that's really about it. And you know, the last thing, I've got this course up running. So if you're interested, come along. But I don't want it to be like a advertisement. I'm really genuinely interested in this thing, and I really think about them a lot because I think it makes us better analysts to understand and to think about this stuff, not just putting numbers on a page. So that's it.
I like the way you bring philosophy to the dynamics. Any questions, comments? Darren, any comments about polls? Polls?
Powerline.
Powerlines?
Oh, no.
No? So you were.
Darren's building them as we speak.
Yeah. And
I
that's
think
really good.
we came to an end. We've got some pizza, I've got some swags as well at the front. Just a quick comment, the user groups of talks is all about networking as well. Not only seeing technical questions, which is good content, it's good, but networking I think is really important. So if you're looking for jobs, if you're looking for hiring like talents, I don't know if anyone is looking for staff, I don't know if you're looking for staff, just if you're looking for a job, just shake hands and then kiss or whatever. And introduce yourself. I think some of the maths But seriously, don't be shy. You're back to just check in with someone and know someone and give you a job. I think that's a critical aspect. Just check in and just introduce yourself. Also, big thank to Devon let you introduce yourself and give them a phone for the there's a lot of people in the room. Thanks there for hosting us again, being for the food and the drinks. But I'll let you maybe close the event and get together and eat the pizzas that they've just been making it.
Yeah, just been busy out the back baking. You saw me probably step back for a couple of seconds, but I'm quick. We are looking for staff at the moment, so if anyone's interested, please feel free to approach us. It was great. Candice, just quick comment. I remember you from the class, and I'm amazed how far you.
She's in bed now. It's too late.
She's come a long way quickly. So that was really good to see. But yeah, thanks everyone. Just great to have everyone turning up again and again. Sorry we couldn't go outside today. Just the weather didn't look quite bright. I think that's it.
So we meet every couple of months usually. It depends on. I've got a schedule. Next one is probably in a couple of months' time. I forgot the date. I'll send you an email. Get you to subscribe to the email, and you can get those daily emails, and you can come. As I said before, if you got something to share, beginners tip, come forward. It's good practice to learn how to present in public as well. That's important to communicate that kind of stuff in your work. So don't be shy. I think we're quite friendly. None of us work for Tableau, so we don't care. We can just back Tableau. Whatever. We don't care. We just users. We love Tableau. We love data storytelling and that kind of stuff. So don't be shy. I think that's my comment. So help yourself. Pizza, swags at the front, and just talk to each other.
Just before going, who's planning on going to TC this year? Tableau conference? 1, possibly 2.